Well, a very good evening to all of you. Welcome back to Hotty Toddy Talk. Apologies for missing last week. I had a very busy week. And let's just be honest, who wanted to talk about a sweep, back-to-back sweeps? Who wanted to talk about that anyway after that debacle that was last week's performance? So nobody, you probably didn't miss that much, but we are back after what was a much better weekend this time around.
Yeah.
Ole Miss had what you would call the definition of a must-win weekend this weekend against their in-state rivals, a series in which they had not won since 2015. It had been 8 years since Ole Miss last won this series. That is pretty bad if you think of it. But they came through this time. And Friday night, we just weren't even worried about Friday night because it was a debacle, a disaster. It was everything that you would hope you wouldn't see. And it did not look good for the weekend. And then things got out of hand Saturday, too. And you started to really worry that Ole Miss was going to drop 2 in a row and lose this. I mean, the balloon was going to be completely popped at that point. But Mike Bianco got himself ejected, and that seemed to light a fire underneath the team. Nick, it's not the journey is far from over, but for Ole Miss, finishing this weekend with 2 out of 3 wins puts you in the SEC technically right back in contention to make a run.
Yeah, like you said, I think after the sweeps, it was things were looking bleak, and obviously the last time we met, the conversation we had, I think you could say they're out of the woods a little bit, but still half of the SEC season to play, 15 games in the books. Still a lot of ball to be played, but definitely big-time momentum. Obviously, you get that series win, like you said, much needed, but the cherry on top is it come against your in-state rival that you said, haven't beat since 2015 in a series. I was still in high school.
Yes.
I'm 26. I was a junior in high school. So it's been a very long time. So it's good to be back. And like you said, big series coming up this weekend, but hopefully you can – kind of bottle up that emotion and that momentum, the energy, whatever you want to call it, and carry it through the rest of the season.
Yeah, I was not in high school. I was out of high school when that last happened, but still a long time ago when that happened. 2015, that feels like a long time ago at this point. We are in April of 2024. So that's
right.
Technically, that's about 9 years ago, technically, is what it was. So, it's been a minute for sure. But either way, Ole Miss gets the nice win. I mean, Saturday was everything that we had not seen for the last 2 weeks out of this team. If you think about it, the fight that they showed to get back into that game and win it in walk-off fashion, that is what we had not seen. Everything about that comeback was the opposite of the last 2 weekends when Ole Miss, quite frankly, the last time we talked, you and I had talked about it almost looked like they'd just given up. Like, I mean, they were kind of just deciding that the season was over. And we were even talking a little bit about our hot boards last time. And that's still a thing, by the way. This series win doesn't change the fact that I think a change needs to be made at the latest at the end of this season. That being said, the team has shown an exuberant amount of fight this weekend. And Saturday night was a prime example of it ain't over till the fat lady sings, as the old saying goes. And they really, really showed some resilience that we have not seen in a minute from this team.
100%. And, while I was sitting watching the game, it was kind of like you said, it has been, if you wanted to think how the last few weeks have went, you say, oh, we're not going to win this game. But at some point, I kind of felt, like we're going to win one of these games. And, maybe with it being the in-state rival, a little added emotion, whatever it may be, and I had thought there in the ninth, it was either the 8th or 9th, we had a good shot to really kind of give them that finishing blow, and we couldn't do it, but we finally came through in, what was it, the 11th or 12th, and finally finished it off. So it was good to see a guy that had a really good start to the season, Jackson Ross, get that walk-off hit. So that was good to see.
How fitting that Sergeant Ross gets the walk-off on Military Appreciation Weekend.
Right.
Very, very, very fitting to get that win on Saturday. Couple of things too that happened that made a difference this weekend. One, Andrew Fisher grew his mustache back. All right, that to me that's the MVP of the weekend. Andrew Fisher's mustache. If I had to pick a player of the weekend, it would be Andrew Fisher's mustache. But anyway, we're gonna but in all seriousness, don't mess with the mojo, Andrew. Keep the mustache. Clearly, there's something about that mustache because he shaved it and Ole Miss tanked. They lost 6 games in a row, so we need to stop shaving things that are working. Luke Hill would cut his hair and all that stuff. Like we can't be doing all that. All right, we got to don't mess with baseball. Is as superstitious a sport as they come. Don't mess with the mojo. All right.
Yeah.
That aside, Chris Lemonis had some very interesting comments after game 1. Basically, he brought up one of my most hated players of all time in this series, in Jake Mangum, the guy that I literally could not stand. Like, never met the kid. I'm sure he's a very nice guy. Personally, I would not have a problem with him. On the baseball field, couldn't stand him. I wish he would strike out every single at bat. The Rebel Killer is what I call him. That man literally would destroy everything Ole Miss worked for in every series. He brought Jake Mangum up, talking about how much he hated Ole Miss when he played for Mississippi State, and how it's a rivalry. You got to have that hatred basically for the other team. And then Johnny Long decided that it would be a good idea to take a walk, I believe it was, and stomped down the first base line, glaring into the dugout, had a few words, and threw his bat about a mile in the air after that. And thank you, Johnny, because that lit a little fire under Ole Miss. And from that point on, Ole Miss went on a rampage and sent them on a what you might call a Johnny Long way back to Starkville with a 2-1 series loss. So those things really stuck in my mind about how this weekend turned out. If you think about when Lemonis made those comments and then Johnny Long decided to put on a little bit of a stupid show there, Ole Miss really it lit a fire underneath them.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought it up because the thing for me, obviously, in-state rivalry and all that thing, and I played baseball back in my heyday and still get into it emotionally. But I don't know what's up with Johnny Long. You saw last weekend against this previous weekend against Georgia, where he stood over the guy at over at home plate and kind of, let the best got the best of him. And then again, he hits his just kind of want to tell you, just hits his first home run of the season. He bats 9th, and you hit your first home run. You flip the bat to your opponent's dugout and come and stomp on home plate. I know it was too close of a game at that point. I think it was the 8th inning. Yeah. But in any other circumstance, he's getting beamed, and I would have been all for it. In-state rivalry, emotions get high, but I don't know what's up with Johnny Long. And
yeah, you said I don't know why I said walk on that. I don't know what I think I was thinking about a previous series that we had where there was a walk bat flip thing that happened. So that's my mistake on that.
All good.
So,
and he just didn't sit well with me sitting on my couch. So I'm sure that kind of, like you said, lit a fire under our guys. If they want to come to our place and disrespect us, kind of like they say, hold my beer, watch this.
Now, let me be clear, by the way. I am all about emotion. I have made it very clear that I cannot stand these umpires who've decided to take it upon themselves to chase players down the first baseline like we saw this weekend in a different series where they're hollering at these players because they're admiring a home run for a minute. Ridiculous. I'm all about bat flips. I'm all about emotion, especially in a rivalry series.
Right.
Well, let me be clear. I don't think Johnny Long should have been ejected, and he wasn't. That being said, he should have been plunked, and that would have been fine too, and he would have absolutely deserved it. And he deserved everything that happened to him after that. And he ended up leaving the game Sunday with some kind of leg issue, I think. It wasn't like a severe injury, but it bothered him. Something was bothering him. You just hate to see it, don't you? Sorry, buddy. But in all seriousness, I would never poke fun at somebody's injury, but karma is a what, as they say, and Johnny Long decided to put on a little bit of a show this weekend, and did not work out well for him. So that aside, I don't. Yes, I joke about it. Baseball is a superstitious sport, absolutely. Mm-hmm. But you do something like that against an Ole Miss team that needed something. They needed a spark plug of some kind. Mike Bianco started it with the ejection. You finally see him sticking up for the team a little bit. And then Johnny Long does that nonsense, and you kind of like that. That was kind of like Mike was the fuse, And then Johnny was the match that lit the fuse. And once that fuse was lit, there was no stopping them. And it was finally the fight was finally there. We've been dying to see it for 6 straight games coming into this weekend. Well, 6 straight SEC games coming into this weekend. They finally showed it, and you finally got what you want to see out of this team. A little bit of spunk, a little bit of attitude. And, hey, I'm just throwing this out there. 2022, when Ole Miss was 7-14 in the SEC, we're a little bit sooner than that now. I get that. We're not quite that many games into the season.
Right.
It just so happened to be Military Appreciation Weekend with the camo helmets, with the infamous "Don't let the Reds get hot" after Ole Miss swept Missouri to kind of start that little run they had. They won a little something that year, I think. It kind of ended the season on a good note. I'm just throwing that out there. Yeah. The mojo started on Military Appreciation Weekend in 2022. You just never know.
Yeah. And to your point, it happened in 22 where we're kind of almost in the same spot, essentially, just a little bit later in the season in 22. But, I think you're out of the woods a little bit, but still, like I said, still got a tough schedule to play. Got to go on the road a few more times and play a few more really, really good teams. Some that their record doesn't show, how good they are. Like you think of LSU, they're way better than their record is. I think, the old saying is, you're only as good as your record says you are, but that's sometimes that's not true. There's a team down in Baton Rouge that is still a very talented group. And I think and to your point, at that point in time, I think you got to give credit to Mike Bianco. The team needed something.
Yeah.
And we've seen him do it before where he goes out and probably before he steps foot out the dugout says, I'm getting ejected right now.
Yeah.
To light a fire under the team. I'm not sure if you heard the hot mic. ESPN2, from what I heard, it was the second weekend in a row that ESPN2 kind of made a boo-boo with a hot mic. So
there's certain situations where the hot mic doesn't work in your favor.
It was good to see Mike. And to how you said, I'm all for a good bat flip, show some emotion, but it is in the rules that if any of that kind of stuff is directed toward the opponent or an umpire, and like Mike said, he was supposed to eject Johnny Long by the rule book. Supposed to be ejected. That's neither here nor there. We won the game, won the series. All is good. But that's and of course it's the rivalry that kind of heightens all that. The margins should be far more thin than normally. But like I said, it's neither here nor there. We won the series, and life goes on.
And again, stupid rule. I absolutely think it's a stupid rule. I think do all the celebrating, do all the showboating you want. But don't complain when you get plucked with a 96-mile-an-hour fastball in the back on the next time you have to play. I don't think the pitcher should be ejected for doing that. I think you give them one, and then now we've had the celebration, we've had the retaliation. Now the next time it's ejection. I could be cool with that, but I think it's dumb. I think you let these kids play, especially in a rivalry series. That aside, doesn't matter. Like you said, Ole Miss won the series, and Johnny Long had to go back to Starkville wondering why he acted a fool and set a fire under his rival and gave them their first series win. And, hey, Johnny Long, now you get to live with that. Your team just suffered the first loss to Ole Miss in a series in 8 years. So take that back to Starkville and weep. Okay, all right, enough about Johnny Long. All right. enough about Johnny. I'm going to have fun with this, all right? We've had a rough season. We've had a rough season.
Yeah.
We got to be excited about it.
We'll take what we can get.
That's right. All right. On a more serious note, Ole Miss, back to the task at hand. Ole Miss, of course, Game 3 was incredible. It was everything you wanted to see. It was exactly how you wanted that game to go. You take the momentum from Saturday night and you carry it right into Sunday, and you come out and Mason Nichols flat out dominated. We'll go into him a little bit deeper in a few more minutes because I know you're going to talk about him. But of course, and I'm going to show this. Let me pop this off the screen real quick so we don't have the split screen issue like we do. Throw this up here and we can just admire this right quick because let's be face it. You can't see a walk-off against Mississippi State too many times.
Furness hits the ball in the air to left field. Chance on the run. Chance watches it fly over his head. It's a walk-off 3-run home run for Will Furness. And Ole Miss takes a series against Mississippi State for the first time since 2015.
All right. Look, Will Furniss had been struggling.
Yes, to say the least.
And you talk about one heck of a way to break your slump. And there's beating your rival, and then there's run ruling your rival in 7 innings in the SEC. Your nationally ranked rival, by the way, who thought they were all that coming into the weekend. I was so happy for Will. I mean, you talk about a kid that had needed that, man. Man, did he need that. He didn't have a terrible weekend, but that is a really good way for him to really kind of break out of the slump, so to speak. And I was so happy for Will to get that get that off his chest, get that walk off. He had a nice little dance between first and second base there, a little jumping action. It was that was about as good of an all around game as we've seen from Ole Miss really since the first 2 against South Carolina.
100%, yeah, one of the better, cleaner games played. Defensively, offensively, on the mound especially, and like you said, we'll get into Nichols, but it was what you wanted to see. I'm sure leaving the park Saturday night, players were real excited, pumped to probably some of them didn't want to leave. They wanted to stay at the park and get ready for Sunday. But, you leave Saturday night and you're chomping at the bit to get back Sunday. And like you said, finish off your in-state rival, but to do it in walk-off fashion, run rule, walk-off fashion, that's a mouthful. But yeah, that's you probably couldn't ask for anything else other than a sweep, but I'll take 2 out of 3. But yeah, and like you said, for Furniss, had been struggling a little bit, struggled in the fall, came out, had a few good weeks earlier this season and then kind of went into a little slump, and then hopefully that can be something, that gets not only him, but the rest of the team going, seeing a guy that's struggling that can get going and maybe because we said it, I'm not sure, it was a few weeks ago on the show, we weren't hitting very well, and hitting's contagious. And you go to the tune of how many hits, 14 run on 16 hits Sunday. Yeah. That'll win you a lot of ball games.
Yeah. And you only give up 4 on the other side. I mean, that's right. How you dominate an SEC game. And look, 2 out of 3 ain't bad is how the old saying goes. And look, you win 2 out of 3 from here on out, you're in really good shape. I mean, by the whole season turns around at that point if you can start doing that. But the season's not going to get any easier. We'll get into that obviously in just a minute. First of all, though, while we're on the subject of Game 3, that brings us to the guy we talked about a minute ago and your player of the weekend. Here we go. There were a couple of options, Nick, that could have been a good choice this week. I don't think anybody would argue with you. But the man of the hour, we both kind of agreed on this. There's really one obvious choice to be player of the weekend, and that's the hurler from Sunday, Mr. Filipich. The floor is yours.
Yeah, player of the weekend, Mason Nichols. Like you said, there was a few other guys. Lege had a good weekend. Smithwick had a good weekend, but ultimately Nichols comes out and gives you, his longest outing in his college career, 6 1/3. Didn't get the last 2 outs, but gives up 1 earned run, only 4 strikeouts, but he threw up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros. And if it wasn't a 0, it was a 1. So no crooked letter numbers given up to your opposing team on Sunday, which typically, Sunday is when you see a lot of hitting. Bullpens are depleted. It's your third starter. Normally kind of like Ole Miss had the 14 runs, 16 hits. But yeah, just gave you his probably best outing of his career when you needed it most. And what I liked most about it was he wasn't feeling all that well. He's had been dealing with some stuff with his shoulder, and really probably didn't have his best stuff. But and it feels like a few times, once or twice, other times, guys that we have heard after games, have said, I wasn't feeling my best, didn't have my best, and they came out and gave you really good outings. So that's good to see that, we're getting something out of guys when they don't have their best. And so sometimes that's what it takes to not only win games, but win series. If you're not seeing the ball well at the plate or your arm doesn't feel good on the mound or you're just not having it that day to still come out and be able to perform. So, yeah, Mason Nichols only gave up 4 hits, 1 run, 4 strikeouts. And like Mike Bianco said after the game, you don't have to pitch well. You don't have to strike everybody out. Only 4 strikeouts and 6 1/3. Nowadays, everybody's enamored over the home runs and the strikeouts. But you win games by putting up zeros, and that's what Mason Nichols came out and did. So glad he was be able to come out and give us that big win Sunday.
Yeah, again, you got to put up the zeros, and especially with the way things have been looking. I mean, obviously, Ole Miss's bullpen was their strong point early in the season,
right?
And boy, have they not been very strong of late. I mean, Liam Doyle wasn't that bad on Saturday. The score looked bad for a few minutes. He only gave up 2 earned runs, 4 runs total, but he struck out 9 and only walked 1 in 4 2/3. But again, the bullpen comes out and gives up, they gave up 5 runs after he left the game. I mean, and then now Sunday was much better, obviously. Mm-hmm. And of course, Friday was just horrendously bad for everybody. So, it's just one of those games where or one of those things rather, where you have to wonder what you're going to get week in and week out. Now you don't really know. And Mason Nichols, he was an anchor of the bullpen. Hey, throw him into a starting role, see what happens. Right. And he's been great. He's 4-0 now in the season. He's got his ERA is still under 3.5. And this guy's getting thrown to the wolves, basically, as a starter, with Mike making all kinds of changes. You just like, what happened to Gunnar Dennis? Like, nobody know, like the guy's just lost it. It's just crazy how that happens. Grayson Saunier has not been back in the rotation. Maddox has been pretty decent, but he hasn't gotten run support. And then once you don't get the run support, he can only go so long, and the bullpen hasn't been great behind him. I mean, he started 2 really pretty good games, honestly, and he's lost to both. So it's just kind of one of those things where you have to wonder what's going on exactly with the pitching staff almost. And again, that brings us back to the point we've been talking about all year. Where's the pitching coach? You got to have a pitching coach, and they don't. So that would be super helpful. But that aside, Mason Nichols, fantastic yet again. Just the absolute leader of this pitching staff when you absolutely had to have one. And Mason, the quiet, very reserved kid that comes out, doesn't show a lot of emotion, just kind of gets out there, does his job, and he does it well. And that's exactly what Ole Miss is going to need going forward. And you really got to hope Doyle comes back into those early Liam Doyle starts that we saw. Because if he can get back to where he was, and then Mason can stay where he's at, all of a sudden you're looking at a couple of good pitchers back to back for Ole Miss. Yeah, you just got to get there first. So we'll see what happens as the year goes on. And that brings us to the final segment here. We'll talk about Ole Miss's upcoming schedule and where everything stands around the SEC. All right, well, after this weekend, Ole Miss is, of course, 5-10 in the conference. They're 20-16 overall. They're still not in a great spot, obviously, right now. Arkansas, of course, at 12-3. A&M 11-4. Mississippi State sitting in third in the West at 7-8. Bama 6-9. Ole Miss there 5-10. LSU and Auburn 3-12 and 2-12. A couple of surprises. The championship curse lives on as LSU wins the title last year, and they are absolutely in the woods right now this year. Ole Miss has to play both those teams, by the way, LSU and Auburn, later this season. And again, as you mentioned, really probably better than their record shows. But the Vols swept the Tigers this weekend, so another series loss for LSU on the road. So things looking good. Kentucky continues to surprise. They're 13-1 in the conference, 29-5 overall. Tennessee behind them at 10-5. Vanderbilt 8-7. South Carolina 8-7. Georgia, Ole Miss's next opponent, is 7-8 in the conference, as well as Florida. Florida overall, by the way, 18-17. Boy, has it been a roller coaster year for them. They have been horrible in their midweek games. Yeah, it's been one of those years. And then Missouri 5-10 in the conference as well, 16-21. So interesting that the East, their worst team is 5-10, that is where Ole Miss stands. So the West definitely the worst of the two divisions in record, but they're brutally beating up on each other also. So a lot to worry about there if you're Ole Miss. Their next opponent, of course, coming up this weekend is Georgia. And that is going to be, I'll tell you what, Ole Miss has their work cut out for them this weekend. Georgia is in Athens, has, of course, Charlie Condon, who is just ridiculous. I'm actually going to pull up. I'm going to pull up his numbers right now, just because it is. This guy has a Player of the Year written all over him. I mean, I would be shocked if anybody else wins it. I mean, obviously he's got the rival there at Georgia Tech that's kind of keeping up with him. But how about 24 home runs and 52 RBIs at this point in the season? The guy is a menace. He's just a flat out menace.
Yeah, and I was about to say it. Condon. And honestly, that's a guy you don't even pitch to. I mean, I don't care if the bases are loaded. You walk in a run, because you don't walk in a run, you give up four runs. He's just and it's interesting because Condon was a redshirt his first year. How does a guy like that get redshirted? And he's a big guy, and he's got those long limbs, and when he gets a hold of the ball. And not only does he have the power, he has the what? Is he hitting like 470 right
482. Now? I mean, the guy, yes.
So not only does he have the power, but he's got the hit tool to go. So he's going to hear his name called very early this summer in the MLB draft and make a good bit of money. Someone's going to pay him a lot of money.
Here's a thought. Don't pitch to him.
No.
It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. Make someone else beat you. It is not that hard. Now, that's not to say that Georgia is an easy out anywhere. They hit 321 as a team. They've got 94 homers. 24 of those have come from Condon. But you've got Corey Collins at 388. Paul, I'm not sure if it's Totes or Tet, so I apologize on how to pronounce his last name, but he's 369. Slade Alford 325. Goldstein 316. Collins has 12 homers. Alford has 9 homers. Goldstein has 9 homers. Colby Branch has 10 homers. There's not an easy out in that lineup, but don't pitch to Charlie Condon. It's not hard. It is not. They don't pay me to make those decisions. I could get out there and say, don't pitch. I don't care if the bases are loaded. If it's a close game, walk him. Walk the one in. I'd much rather walk one in than give up 4.
Absolutely.
Look, that is now. Obviously, I get it. If you're winning, you got to think about. I don't care. It's Charlie Condon. The guy is unstoppable. He bats 482. I go back to one of my favorite movies, Moneyball. As Brad Pitt would say, he gets on base. Don't pitch to him. Just walk him. It's not okay. It's not hard. It's not hard. It really isn't hard. That is my professional baseball opinion. Don't pitch to Charlie Condon.
Yeah, but it doesn't take a professional to figure that out. When you have a guy getting hit, not only just getting on base 48% of the time, there might not be easy outs on the team, but there are easier outs. So, you hear that term, pick your battles. You don't pick a battle with Charlie Condon. You put him point over to first base. Mike Bianco can point to first base and let Condon get some conditioning in down to first base.
Yeah, and you're going to look. It's going to be in Athens. You're going to get booed. It's going to be in Athens. At his home field. Yeah. Guess where he's going to hit really well? His home field. All right. So anyway, again, have I said it? Did I mention don't pitch to Charlie Condon? I would not pitch to Charlie Condon. All right, moving on. Around the league this coming weekend, Texas A&M will take on Alabama. Texas A&M absolutely dominated Vanderbilt this past weekend. They are looking really, really strong as well. Florida and Vanderbilt looking to bounce back. Florida trying to figure out who they are and what team's actually going to show up every weekend. That's going to be looking for a bounce back series really for both of them. Of course, Ole Miss and Georgia, Tennessee and Kentucky. That's the battle of first and second in the East.
Yeah, that'll be a big one.
That's going to be, quite frankly, that's the series of the weekend in the SEC if you look at it. And then Auburn is going to be with Mississippi State. I anticipate Mississippi State winning that series if I had to guess. Arkansas, South Carolina, that's going to be another good series. But, as far as it goes, LSU and Missouri, a battle of the bottom feeders right now. So we'll kind of see. Is LSU going to continue their championship curse, or are they going to bounce back and kind of come forward with a series win? So it'll be interesting to see what they do in that series as well. Because, again, you never know in this league. And Ole Miss has Alabama following Georgia, and then they'll have Auburn. So they will be taking on these teams here before too long. But of course, Georgia is up first. Friday's game will be at 5 p.m. Central Time, Saturday at 1 and Sunday at noon. So it's going to be a fairly reasonable start times for all those games. Georgia also coming into the latest D1 baseball poll at number 23. So back-to-back ranked opponents for Ole Miss as they will be looking to get some momentum finally. But of course, before all that, you got to go to Arkansas State, who already beat Ole Miss once this year. Can't forget about that. You got to play them tomorrow night. And Ole Miss already lost to them in Oxford once. So you got to bounce back and find a way to beat Arkansas State before you even worry about Georgia. I'll be curious to see who Mike decides to throw tomorrow night as well, because I don't think he's announced it just yet.
Yeah, not to my knowledge. Yeah, and like you said, you can't put the cart before the horse. You still got to go to Jonesboro and play a team that beat you already once. You got to play them at their place, and then not only that, you got to come back to Oxford, and then the next day you're getting on a bus down to Athens.
Yeah, and
they normally head down there on Thursdays, and they get a practice in there Thursday night. So it's a long week for sure. So, yeah, it's just, and it never gets easier in the SEC, does it? So
it definitely does not.
Merry-go-round keeps on going.
The grind don't stop, and it is not going to stop. Tomorrow's game, 6 p.m. On the ESPN Plus at Arkansas State. You got to win that one. I mean, you simply can't lose it. You got to get that momentum going into Georgia. Find a way to get the bats going. Don't let them beat you, and get down there to Georgia and see what happens. I mean, Georgia's been kind of a roller coaster team this year. You never really know what you're going to get from them, but you do know what you're going to get. I mean, from Condon, and their pitching staff isn't bad. So you're going to have to bring it. I mean, winning on the road in the SEC is very difficult to do. I mean, almost every weekend the home team wins. I mean, Ole Miss did not win. They got swept by Kentucky. But that's been kind of the anomaly. Honestly, it's been very much a home-dominated season to this point of the SEC. So you got to find a way to get a road win or two. And again, you need to win 2 out of 3. You're at a point. You're 5-10 in the conference. You're in it, but you're not in it. I mean, you've got to get the momentum to even get to Hoover, much less worry about anything else. So find a way to do it. And we may talk about that game. We may have a preview show a little bit later in the week, depending on how the schedule falls. We will see. But in the meantime, Ole Miss and Georgia coming up this weekend. Until next time, he is at Nick Phillipich 11. I am at Austin on Air 1021. We appreciate you guys watching this edition of Hotty Toddy Talk, and we will talk to you next time. Have a great night.